Hello, and welcome to the next instalment in the motorcycling from Penrith back to Goulburn. In this video I'm on the Hume Highway, or the Hume Motorway, or Highway 31, whichever one you want to know it by. I think in New South Wales it's officially known as the Hume Highway or Highway 31, and when you cross the border into Victoria it's known as the Hume Motorway. It's the main highway north-south between Sydney and Melbourne, and carries a lot of traffic, particularly freight. So there are lots of trucks on the road, and when I was coming up to Sydney at the beginning of this video, early on Wednesday morning, as I explained in that first video, there were lots and lots of trucks heading towards Sydney, and as you'll see in this video, lots of traffic heading out of Sydney towards Goulburn. All the things that I talked about in the last video in terms of riding to get maximum fuel economy would apply here on the road. You can see it's a dual carriageway. There's a pretty wide shoulder on the left hand side, and there's a very wide nature strip, if you like, between the northbound and the southbound lanes that I'm on, and the northbound lanes that are on the other side of on the right hand side there. And generally I think the road is a pretty good road. I was going to talk in this video about social media, and without getting on a tirade about the evils of social media, I was going to talk about some of the things that I think are positives about that and some of the things that I think are not so good about that. But I've decided instead, something else came to my attention today that I thought would make a good subject for a video, so I'm going to discuss that topic in this video, and I will come back to the social media one in the next clip of this series. One of the things that we're very fond of talking about, but perhaps not all that clear about what they exactly are civil liberties. And we say we have the right to freedom of choice and the right to freedom of movement and various things like that. And these civil liberties became more important, I guess is the word, during the COVID pandemic, when people were locked in their houses, when governments through the police were issuing fines for people being in parks when they weren't exercising, they were just sitting down drinking a coffee and enjoying the sun, or various other things that came up during the period of that pandemic. And of course, as we know now, many of those fines were overturned by the courts, and those laws that restricted people's freedom of movement have been called into question. Now, this isn't an argument about things that happened during the COVID pandemic, or it isn't a discussion about those things at all, but it is about what we might consider to be our civil liberties, and the fact that we, either by consent or by grudging agreement, accept that the governments have the power through legislation to curtail our civil liberties and what we consider to be our rights and freedoms. Now, for example, we allow the government to put restrictions on the use of alcohol. We allow the government to impose restrictions on who can gamble and where gambling can take place. We allow the government to make laws that say certain drugs are illegal. We allow the government to curtail our civil liberty to drive whatever car we want by saying, well, first of all, you must have a licence, and there are graduated licences, and if you have a particular licence, there are certain cars that the government says you can't drive. You can't drive cars with turbochargers and things like that when you're on a red provisional licence, for example. And we do these things because, or we accept, perhaps grudgingly sometimes, that some of these things are necessary because although you and I are both law-abiding citizens, and we will do what common sense tells us we ought to do, and we'll drive safely, and we won't smoke, and we won't gamble, and we know that smoking's not good for us, we won't take illegal drugs, we won't drink to excess, and so on. We're not sure about the other person. So we accept that there have to be some restrictions on our civil liberties. We accept, for example, that the police can randomly pull you over and ask you to take a roadside breath test for how much alcohol you consumed, and they can at the same time test you to see if you've ingested any illegal substances. That might be an infringement on our civil liberties, but we've accepted that drink driving is inherently dangerous and causes lots of accidents and deaths, and therefore the infringement to our civil liberties is justified. There was a point when seatbelts were first coming into cars, and when Volvo, who were the first people to develop and design a seatbelt that worked, were able to prove that seatbelts saved lives, and governments were contemplating making seatbelt wearing mandatory, when there were civil libertarians who said it was an infringement of people's civil liberties to be told to wear a seatbelt. The civil libertarians in Australia at least have reviewed their thinking about that and have admitted that they got that wrong. But we accept that wearing a seatbelt is perhaps an infringement of our civil liberties to decide whether we do or don't wear one. But we know that they save lives, so we accept that. Sometime in the late 60s or perhaps the early 70s, certainly by the time I started riding motorcycles in about 1971, wearing a helmet was mandatory in Australia. And whilst there may be people who still grudgingly bellyache about that, we know that wearing a helmet saves lives. We know that wearing a helmet will prevent catastrophic injuries to the head. And whereas if you go down on your motorcycle and you break a leg, break a bone, the bone will probably heal. If you leave some bark on the road, your highly expensive tattoo may now be on the road, but with skin grafts and so on, hopefully that will heal. But if you have a severe head injury, your chances of recovering from that are slim to none, and that the helmet will prevent the worst of those head injuries. So we accept that wearing a helmet, whilst it might be an infringement of our civil liberties, we accept that it's necessary, it's the law, and as far as I know, nobody in Australia is fined for not wearing one because everybody wears one. Now, I'm saying this because today it came to my attention after watching a video from MC Rider, who is a guy I've spoken about before. He's a guy named Kevin who runs MC stands for Motorcycle Rider. He runs a website and YouTube channel, and he's a Motorcycle Safety Foundation instructor that lives in Fort Worth, Dallas in Texas, or Fort Worth, Dallas area in Texas. And he, in a video today, talked about the repeal of helmet laws in the state of Missouri. Now, until sometime recently, 2022 I believe, Missouri was presumably a state where wearing a helmet was mandatory. But in 2022 the legislators decided to repeal that law. No one's really sure why, although one of the commenters on his video did give an explanation which I'll come to in a moment. But they repealed that law with certain caveats. Those caveats being, first of all, that a person riding the motorcycle without a helmet had to be 26 years of age or over. Secondly, they had to have a life insurance policy. Now, I can imagine a scenario where you're barreling down the highway on your Harley Davidson FLCTH, whatever it is, Fat Boy or whatever motorcycle it is that you have is your choice of your bike of choice. You've decided that the helmet laws have given you a new right of freedom, and the wind is rushing through your hair and you're roaring down the freeway at the motorway, highway, whatever you call it, at the allowable speed limit, or maybe just over the allowable speed limit, because after all, that's what you do on the motorways on your Harley. And the local state police, the local police officer, the state trooper, somebody in law enforcement in Missouri pulls you over because they say you're speeding. Now, undoubtedly the first thing they're going to ask you for is license and registration and proof of insurance. I see that all the time on videos auditing First and 14th Amendments in America. And so the police ask you for registration and insurance to prove that you are the owner of the bike, that you're licensed to ride the bike, and that it's insured. And I'm assuming when they ask for that insurance, they're looking for the what we call green slip or compulsory third-party insurance rather than comprehensive insurance. So you duly produce those documents. The police officer is going to do a mental calculation and ask you to confirm, are you over the age of 26? If you are, then perhaps you're going to still get the speeding fine if you were speeding. You may be asked to take a roadside breath test. But if you're over the age of 26 and he does the he or she does the calculation, confirms that by the date of birth on your license, then you've dodged one of the bullets. But then the second thing that they're going to ask you is, well, do you have life insurance? Now, I presume that what's going to be required in the state of Missouri from now on is that not only must you carry your driver's license, carry your registration, and carry your insurance card, as they call it there, that is a proof of third-party insurance, you must now carry a document that proves that you have a life insurance policy. If you don't have that, or if you don't have it with you, and the police officer is not able to verify that you have a life insurance policy, I assume that you will then be issued with a citation or fine or whatever they call it in the United States. And perhaps you can contest that in court by saying, well, I did actually have a life insurance policy, I just don't carry the policy around in my back pocket when I'm out motorcycling, or I don't have a card from the insurer to prove that I have a life insurance policy. Now, one of the people who commented on that video made this observation. Now, I don't know whether this is true or not. I'm not saying it is or it isn't. I'm saying I don't know. And this person said that the reason that the requirement to be 26 years of age came into, why that stipulation was made, was because employers, the insurance, that health insurance that employers provide for most workers, or for workers, some workers in the state of Michigan at least, has to cover children up to the age of 26. Now, presumably that means children do not attain adulthood in most parts of America till they're 21, and therefore, for 5 years after that, the insurance company could still be liable for any injuries or costs associated with an injury to that child. So, this commenter said that the requirement to be 26 years of age was because employers' insurance has to cover children up to 26 years of age, and several large employers fought for this so they wouldn't be on the hook for long-term care and costs of children of employees who suffered catastrophic head injuries. So let's assume that you are an 18-year-old teenager, obviously, and you're riding your motorcycle and you don't have you decided not to wear your helmet, and you have an accident, and of course you suffer a catastrophic head injury. Your parents' employment insurance, or insurance, health insurance that's provided by their employer, is responsible to cover you until the age of 26. And you could see that the employers would be looking at this and thinking, our premiums are going through the roof, we don't want to carry that cost. And so they campaigned for, according to this commenter. Now, as I say, I don't know whether that's true or not, and I've no reason to doubt or accept that it's just what this person said in their comments. As to the reason why, any other reason why the state of Missouri would repeal a helmet law, I cannot think of a reason other than the notion that seems to be, on my assessment of things, part of the American psyche, which is that the government should not tell me what to do, even if it's good for me. So there are states in America where wearing helmets is not compulsory. There are also states where wearing seatbelts is not compulsory. And the argument seems to be that I'm a mature, responsible adult. I know whether I want to wear a seatbelt or not. And if I choose not to wear one, that is my decision. And I should not, the government should not interfere in my life and tell me what to do, even though wearing a seatbelt is demonstrably safer for me and for all of the passengers in my vehicle. Equally, the thinking that the government is mandating a wearing of a helmet is the government telling individuals what to do, and the government, be it the state or federal government, should not tell anybody what to do. Individuals should make up their own mind, and individuals should be responsible for their own safety and make their own decisions. And so a government should not tell people to adopt safety measures. Now, I'm not sure how to respond to that other than to think, well, even if the insurance company, even if you have a life insurance policy and your life insurance company pays out on your claim for catastrophic head injury or death resulting from failure to wear a helmet, for example, so that the state's not on the hook or your employer's not on the hook, that hardly compensates for the loss of a life of a person who may be the breadwinner or a loved one in a family. It hardly compensates for the trauma of the first responders who come to an accident and find a person literally with their head split open and their brains all over the road because they've chosen not to wear a helmet while wearing a motorcycle. I've never been an ambulance or paramedic or anything like that, and I've never been in the police force or anything like that, but I cannot honestly think of anything more traumatic than coming upon a road accident scene and finding a person on the side of the road with their head split open and their brain all over the road because they failed to wear a helmet. I've had a son who's been involved in 2 motorcycle accidents. One of them, not very serious. The bike was damaged, but not him. The second one, some pretty severe injuries, broken bones and ribs and so on, and concerns about concussion and so on. And he was wearing full leathers and a helmet and gloves, and as far as we could determine, a tyre blew out in the bike and that caused the accident. And as a parent, it was a frightening experience to think that our son could have been catastrophically injured or worse. So if you are the first responder that comes to one of those scenes and you find a motorcyclist by the side of the road and you thought for the want of a few $100s for a bit of fiberglass and foam to put on your head, that person might be alive. So I can't think of a reason why you would get on a motorcycle and not wear one. So those are my thoughts on that law and the repeal of that law. Feel free to make a comment of your own if you have one. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the scenery, and I'll be back to talk about social media in the next video. Thank you for watching.